We stay on the hamster wheel of what's the next thing that's going to fill that void when there's no void. We're fine just the way we are, but we're not told that enough. And, we all are susceptible to internalizing these damaging messages. And it does shrink our emotional capacity. If we stay just fixated on what my body looks like, yes, I'll finally get the relationship I want, or my partner will love me more if I look a certain way, then we're not tuned into all the other things that we need to live and to feel loved and held. And it's really painful. And it's capitalism, right? It's consumer culture. It's meant to be there. And so the more we can build awareness in our clients that we're sold these messages and they serve this purpose, the more we can sort of help them fight that system.
Welcome to Therapist Uncensored. Building on decades of professional experience, this podcast tackles neurobiology, modern attachment, and more in an honest way that's helpful in healing humans. Your session begins now with Dr. Ann Kelly and Sue Marriott.
I'm really jazzed about our sponsor, Peak Nandeca. I literally drink it every morning. Sue can attest to that because I love the way it makes me feel. When they reached out to be a sponsor, I was a little skeptical because I'm not a coffee drinker, but I had really been curious because my caffeine intake had gone up and up and up because I was really craving that kind of alert focus that caffeine gave me. But I was feeling bad, too much jitters. I didn't like it. So I was really curious about this. And I can tell you that I really love it. It increases my focus, clarity, and my metabolism. I can feel the difference when I drink it. It's a slow release caffeine from probiotic fermented teas and mushrooms. They're functional mushrooms and they add cacao to enhance cellular function, and it works to balance the stress response, but it elevates my mood and my focus. And one of the fun things is that this new year, I have really wanted to get off any processed foods. And so as a side note, since I'd been drinking it regularly, I put it into assessment in AI, like, is this a processed food? I've been doing that a lot and been surprised how much things come back as processed. This was not. It is fermented tea that's triple toxin screened. So it really has unmatched purity and the fruity body mushrooms. The quality is excellent, and I loved getting an outside confirmation of that. So right now you can get 20% off plus a free starter kit when you shop exclusively at peaklife.com/TU. So that's PIQUELIFE.com/TU, Peak Life. Hey everyone, our two guests are from Austin, Texas, and I'm so excited to have them on the show. Dr. Vanessa Scaringi and Kathryn Garland. Vanessa Scaringi is a licensed psychologist, and Kathryn is a clinical social worker, but both are certified eating disorder specialist supervisors. And they co-own a practice called Calm Counseling here in Austin, Texas, that specializes in treatment for disordered eating and body images. Welcome to the show, Vanessa and Kathryn. So excited to have you here.
Thanks so much.
Excited to be here.
So we get to run into each other off and on in all sorts of different events in Austin. And I love talking to you two. I love of course, because y'all have an attachment lens. It is very inspiring to me on this topic. So I am excited that y'all agreed to come on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we couldn't be more excited.
One of the things I've noticed, like we just mentioned, it's National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. I never hear you two speak about an eating disorder. You always talk about disordered eating and body image. Why do you refer to it as disordered eating rather than eating disorder?
Disordered eating is such a great catch-all phrase. It encompasses anything from restrictive behaviors or overeating to just dieting and having anxiety about food or rigidity about when we eat, how we eat, what kinds of foods we eat. And it's so common. So when you start saying it in the way that it's disordered eating, and naming that it can catch all these different behaviors, I think more and more people become aware of, oh, I might do some of that, versus eating disorders, which people more commonly think of as anorexia, bulimia, nervosa, binge eating disorder, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. So those are eating disorders. And when you name them as such, I think people can easily shy away from, oh, I don't have that. I'm not, below a certain weight, or I'm not binging and purging all the time. So I don't have any kind of issue with food. And when you make it more open in the disordered eating way, people start to really question that a little bit more.
Yeah, then it's like it's something to explore in yourself rather than to just it's also so much less pathologizing, isn't it? It's just that it's our relationship to food, just like our relationship to relationships or to alcohol. We have a relationship to things that impact us and our health, and that is impacted by so many things around us, isn't it?
Yes. And our relationships with other people are so connected to and tied to our relationship with food. I mean, when we start talking about attachment, that's like one of the first ways in which we get connected is through food, right? That the baby at the bottle or on the breast, like that's a superconductor for connection and attachment. We're talking about eating disorders in this way or disordered eating. It gets this sort of view of being only really acute circumstances with disordered eating or eating disorders. And when we can change that language a little bit, it just invites curiosity for all of us to look at our relationship with food and how that is impacted by our relationships with people and vice versa.
You've been in the field for quite a long time. Do you feel that people's relationship to food right now, do you feel it's been more negatively? Is there an increase in people struggling in their relationship to food? Have you seen that?
Well, what Vanessa and I really witnessed in our group practice during COVID is that, there was a lot of media attention on disordered eating and eating disorders because there was a huge rise during that time. Obviously, this is a time in the world where we were all kind of collectively experiencing this feeling of insecurity. And there's a lot of research on the connection between insecure attachment and eating disorder behaviors. Obviously, this is a way to cope with uncomfortable, unstable feelings. So we did see just this huge rise in eating disorders during that period of time. Treatment centers were full with waiting lists. Like, people could not get treatment because there was such an influx of people struggling. And, since that time, I think a lot of people would agree we haven't really gotten a break from the feeling of insecurity in the world. If anything, it's just continued to rise and rise. And connected to that, I think we, understandably see people turning to behavior with food to help them to cope and try to emotionally regulate.
As you mentioned, that our first attachment relationship starts with food as a soothing and connection. It's paired, isn't it? It's the feeling of being satiated with food and the warmth of a caregiver coming close to give it. There's obviously going to be so much pairing in our implicit body with when we are stressed, when we are insecure, and we need some sort of comfort, that our relationship to food is going to be really active. That makes so much sense.
And that's in the best of circumstances, right? When you're talking about food insecurity in the world and how that plays into maybe not necessarily your security with your primary attachment figure, but just your security in the world, this sort of sociocultural attachment to the greater society, not being able to trust that there's going to be enough or that there's going to be scarcity.
Yeah, the concept of scarcity is super amplified right now. And scarcity of anything creating insecurity and a desire to or a fear, if I'm not going to have enough, I need to grab it quick. I need to satiate.
Or go without, figure out how to
Oh,
go without. Yeah.
oh, point taken. What were your thoughts, Vanessa?
I was thinking about just the increase of all the food behaviors. There's also now the introduction of GLP-1s, this medication that's supposed to, quote unquote, cure us from any kind of eating, a relationship with food that can be cured with a GLP-1. I know they serve other purposes, but I'm just thinking in terms of how rampant the use of GLP-1s is right now in just weight loss and people trying to pursue weight loss and attaining the medication at med spas, things that are clearly just to numb something out, just to reduce, a sensation, a feeling. I think there's a lot of that goes on too with food behaviors, is not wanting to be in touch with our humanity, not really feel connected to how bleak things are or how nervous one might feel. And the use of food behaviors serves that purpose, or even the reduction of any kind of food intake. And we see that for sure with GLP-1s. There's like a numbing of emotions that can happen. There's a dulling of joy, a dulling of your hunger. It totally throws you off in terms of what you're hungry for. And I think there's a way that people might be craving that emotionally too, just to like, can I just dole out all the things right now?
I had not thought of that. That the one of the impact of the GP1 is the goal is to decrease the sense of desire for hunger, but it must affect all other senses because you can't just get in there and just numb one little element. So they are finding that it is numbing different areas of the personality and the experiences of anxiety in the world.
Yeah, things are just a little duller.
Some of that is exciting and interesting. And I think they're doing studies right now with substance misuse and GLP-1s because it's actually reducing cravings there, which, we're not complete Luddites who are anti-technology or definitely not anti-science by any means, but just encouraging people to be curious about so much of the eating disorder world. Our treatment for disordered eating is through the lens of intuitive eating. So being curious about what happens when you alter that kind of intuitive ability to track hunger and fullness cues. Some people describe that as amazing and really, life-changing. It's helpful for PCOS. It's helpful for diabetes, obviously. But as Vanessa's describing, when it's on such a mass scale, and you do live in a world where there is capital connected to thinness, and you are encouraged to, through, weight stigma and how that impacts so many different parts of our lives, to reduce your size. Does that in some ways lead to potential disordered eating? And the messaging that can send on an emotional level is something that we should just be really talking about very openly as people are taking these medications more and more.
Can you drop into how you see the messages on body image? Like what kind of things are impacting? I know we've spoken before that you even see Gen Zs as even more than others being negatively impacted by some of the media and the messages. So, can you speak a little bit about what kind of body image messages we are getting and how it's affecting the way we relate to food?
There's constant changes in terms of messaging that we receive. Lately, I feel like there's this big shift back to the 90s sort of thin as in. I don't think it ever went away, in a lot of ways, but I've certainly heard clients talk about their algorithm serving them more and more messaging about disappearing. There was this moment in time where body positivity really took off and it was exciting. And it sort of got co-opted in this way of, well, you should just love your body. The language really shifted. It didn't start out that way. And I think there has been sort of a shift away from that even, that there's more desire to be thin again. Women are shrinking. I mean, small studies, but breast augmentations, breast reductions have actually increased in women. And that's interesting. It's something to take note of, that there's something in the zeitgeist that's telling women to shrink. And obviously, this isn't just for women. I think there's a lot of manipulation that's happening with men's bodies as well, a lot of pressure that everyone's facing. And in our work that we do, we see disordered eating as a way of coping. And so when we think of it as that in those terms, folks are trying to cope with the difficulties that they're experiencing in the world. And one easy sort of, I'm putting easy in quotes, but one way to do that is through food and to feel like you have sort of control over some part of your life. Whereas the world can be a really scary place. We're hearing a lot of scary things all the time. And I think reducing your sphere in this way of like, oh, well, I can at least manage what I'm eating, or I can try to, exercise more. There's a way that is not only to control the discomfort, but I think it is one way of controlling discomfort.
Yeah. And it's such a, I think, not to go too political, but sometimes we do. There is this sort of more conservative lens that's kind of being cast across the country. There's talk about sort of a temperance kind of movement of like staying away from alcohol and being clean and, not this sort of purity culture that kind of sneaks in, which oftentimes will, in disordered eating behaviors, that might, as Vanessa was describing, look like more mechanized, kind of optimizing your health and really, getting into this sort of idea of longevity, and there's control in that, right? And so from an attachment lens, we're often looking at that as, that feels very avoidant of maybe some of the other feelings that feel really out of control and beyond our scope of being able to manage. And then you also see people who are really struggling with, I am feeling so lost, so lonely, so hopeless, really looking for reassurance. And those are the folks who maybe are binging more often or emotionally eating, who may be feeling more anxiously attached. And then there's everything in between, right? But we sort of like to talk to clients about the underlying attachment need that may be getting filtered through the use of food. These food behaviors are sort of, or even just mirrored in our behavior with food. And then if you think about how the sort of push and pull of all of that, right? That the messaging is you should be in control. You should be, going to the gym at 4 a.m. and drinking the protein powders, or I don't even know what it is, but these detoxes and whatever. And not really what we know about binging or emotionally eating is that it's really driven oftentimes by restriction. So those things are sort of a cycle. So there is this sort of like chaotic experience of food in our culture where we are oftentimes far away from having that regulation and balance that might come with an ease or a secure attachment with food. Sometimes we're turning to food to cope, and then other times we're saying, no, that's bad. We can't do that. We can't have those types of foods, and no ultra processed foods, no, foods that are this or that, or those are junk foods. It really just puts us in a really disorganized state of kind of cycling through what are my needs and how do I get them met, or no, I don't have any needs. I don't ever need to get them met by anyone else. I'll just be entirely self-sufficient from that avoidant lens.
Wow. Yeah. And you mentioned the marketing that is involved in each one of those pushes, right? And you describe it in such like as you were speaking, I can feel the disorganized messages that I think I was less aware of before you mentioned that it's the restriction. It sounds like health. Let's get healthy. Let's quit drinking. Let's eat pure. It sounds healthy, right? Like they're pushing for the health, but then there's these ways to do it. And it's the ultimate message is to be able to get thin and to look good. And what I think I heard you saying, Kathryn, in that is that the message is restriction, and then restriction can create anxiety because it does that as humans, right? As humans, when we feel we're not going to get something, whether it's food or love or care or identity, or, and we think it's valuable to us, inevitably it makes us more preoccupied with it, right? Like it makes us in a relationship with that could lean us in a more preoccupied way, or it can lead us into, I need to cut that off. That's not good for me. So I'm going to distance from it, and more in a dismissing way of relating to things. It almost sounds like the GLP-1s is a promotion of the avoidance. Am I getting that off?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Say a little bit more about that, if you would.
Again, there's a place for GLP-1s. We're in no way against them. People definitely need them and benefit strongly. And there's this disconnect from intuition that happens. So it's the numbing, you're sort of moving away from any sort of internal compass, driving your hunger, your fullness. And it serves to perpetuate that let's just avoid. There might be an underlying eating disorder or disordered eating to address, but we're not going to address it. Let's just take this medication and let's just we'll get thin with it. And so then we don't have to even understand, well, there are difficult feelings that are happening that are driving these behaviors. And now we just sidestep that. It's concerning. And a lot of clients are presenting on the GLP-1s. And so tackling some of the underlying emotional components can be challenging. They're not even necessarily feeling those things as intensely. And I know there's a lot of relief that comes from that. Clients are describing like, oh, I don't have the food noise, I don't have the confusion or the overwhelm. And I understand the relief that comes with that. And when all of that is not happening, we're also not able to get under the hood of the car and really address, well, why are you feeling so overwhelmed? How can we help you learn to tolerate and engage with those feelings so that you can move towards seeking what you're actually needing versus just avoiding it entirely? Because there's an emotional need that goes unmet.
And just like we speak quite a bit on the podcast about avoidant ways of dealing with emotions, that our body knows we're feeling it. So just shutting it off by disconnecting from it and shutting it down, that doesn't mean the stress in our body goes away. That doesn't mean that our health goes up even if our weight goes down, unless we are also getting under the hood, as you said, going, what is this pressure? What is this noise that you're feeling? What is it representing? Especially if it's representing really primal kinds of needs that are happening or not being met that we're meeting through food. So I think what I hear you saying about the intuitive eating, and maybe we could drop a little bit into that. I mean, I could also imagine if you struggled with weight for, I would imagine it's kind of a different scenario if somebody struggled with their weight their whole life and has PCOS and has chronic conditions, and they've been looking at it, and now there's this medication that can really assist them. And then there's individuals that I just need to be thinner to keep up with the image that I'm being marketed. And if I get this, but the promotion of the disconnect from our internal feelings, that's what I'm worried about.
Yes. What we're really talking about on its face is, there's so many different unique circumstances for everyone who may be facing disordered eating or dealing with that or taking GLP-1s. There's, such varied reasons. The thing that we have in common is that we are living in this very consumerist culture where we are getting all of this really damaging messaging and exploitation of people who are struggling, right? And so really at the heart of it, like getting from the attachment lens, we are always advocating for people to do just that. That if the GLP-1 medication is something that you want to take for various reasons, that's not our position to say yay or nay, although there are concerns about that setting off disordered eating if you have not had a history of an eating disorder, among others. But really, what Vanessa said, just getting deeply involved in, just as we would with anyone taking a medication. I mean, how many of our clients are on antidepressants that I would never say, don't take an antidepressant if that's helpful to you, right? But let's also be talking about, what were some of the reasons leading up to that sense of depression? What was lacking, or what is the unfulfilled need? Unpacking all of that is just so hugely important so that you can be in touch with your intuition, your innate sense of value in the world, that you are not just a consumer of products. You are not just a little ant on the anthill. You're like a very, very important person and have a unique set of needs. And we really want to stay in touch with that, not get you distracted and out of touch with all of the importance of that.
And helping somebody, I imagine, stay in touch with their own value with all the messages that they're getting is a challenge. Even as therapists, we are all getting the same messages and we all have the same biases coming in. And as much as we want to challenge that, I guess as therapists, we have to be really aware of, not getting on the bandwagon of the marketing unintentionally.
Yes. Our ability to understand our hunger and fullness needs, like that idea Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch, who wrote the book Intuitive Eating, there is a lot about our emotional state in that book and how that kind of gut feeling outside of just our relationship with food can help us in so many areas of life, right? And in this current culture of it's hard to trust anything or anyone, like all of these sort of people in charge bad actors, or AI and misinformation, and being so confused about what is real and what is not real. Really fine tuning our ability to understand our needs when it comes to food and our bodies is also refining that same skill of, yes, I don't know, this something doesn't feel right about this. I don't like this messaging that's being directed at me, this marketing that is telling me I need this supplement or I need to go to this gym or whatever it is. That feels like diet culture. That feels like it's telling me I'm not enough as is, and I'm going to push away from that, and I'm going to lean into other health promoting behaviors or situations that really do feel like they're about general health promotion rather than just weight loss or the pursuit of thinness.
And we have, the benefit when we're working with clients individually or in groups to slow things down and really help start to peel back all the layers of understanding that individual's value system and how that value system doesn't align with the messaging that they're being sold, or we're all being sold, like you're saying, and that it's just, we live in a culture that it's rampant, and it takes a lot of energy to really start to try to get more in touch with, okay, I'm fighting a system that's, diet culture system that's pumping out these messages all the time. And I don't want to be small. I want to stand up for myself. I want to articulate my needs. And, I might have to be uncomfortable in order to do that. And that might mean not jumping on some diet bandwagon and then I live in this world that is promoting thinness. So it's this, it's confusing. There's a lot of noise, and we're sort of in this privileged state with our clients where we get to help them, walk with them on that journey, slow it down. And it's exciting to be able to do that. And it's also, we get how hard it is. We really know how much we're all faced with.
To slow it down feels so hard, doesn't it? Like, I love the word privilege, like to be able to go in and sit and get the noise out of your head and your body to go values driven is such a huge step, because otherwise it takes so much more energy to do that on some level than it does to go to your pantry or go to your, because we're overwhelmed, right? As we were mentioning earlier, we are continuously overwhelmed. And that is the recipe for promoting us, as we talk about on our podcast, going out on the spectrum of activation. In other words, the more anxiety that you're not right, you can't be right, and you will be worthy once you do, is the deepest form of insecure promotion. We do that if we do that with children, and we can see that. I will love you if you go and get thin and you get strong. If we were to say that out loud to our kids, it would sound crazy. And yet we tell that to ourselves. I will be lovable once I change in these other ideal ways. And I just think so how painful that is for all of us. I'm not talking about those people out there. It's painful for us. It's painful for all of us. And men too. It used to be that it was women needed to be thin, but you see as much advertisement with rippled men as you do with women now. And so if we continue to stay in this reactive place and not taking the time to slow down, they really just promote us living in our reactive selves instead of our full, connected, more valued selves. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we stay on the hamster wheel of what's the next thing that's going to fill that void when there's no void. We're fine just the way we are, but we're not told that enough. And, we all are susceptible to internalizing these damaging messages. And it does shrink our emotional capacity. If we stay just fixated on what my body looks like, yes, I'll finally get the relationship I want, or my partner will love me more if I look a certain way. then we're not tuned into all the other things that we need to live and to feel loved and held. And it's really painful. And it's capitalism, right? It's consumer culture. It's meant to be there. And so the more we can build awareness in our clients that we're sold these messages and they serve this purpose, the more we can sort of help them fight that system.
And what you said, Anne, that it's so hard to get people on board with that because it is so normalized in our culture. Vanessa and I will often joke that, we started off the podcast talking about why do we say disordered eating versus eating disorders? And we'll sort of joke to ourselves when we have maybe a younger therapist who's training with us or working with us, that all of a sudden there are these moments of knowing like, oh my God, but everybody has disordered eating. Like I'm seeing it everywhere. I'm seeing it with my friends. I'm seeing it in my family. It's this sort of like, you can't unsee what you have seen. Maybe it goes a little far once you're first, coming to this stage of enlightenment and then you kind of calm down. But it is extremely normalized in our culture. You go try to have a conversation about this with the majority of people. They're kind of like, whoa, what are you talking about? Like, I just wanted to order a salad or, whatever it is, that you can get a little bit down the rabbit hole. But there is so much truth to it that our food behaviors are so connected to just our inherent sense of self-worth and how devalued that is in our culture. So the more that we can bang that drum, as paranoid as we may sound, or as out there as we may sound, it's just hopeful for people to have that embedded in their minds. And by the way, the idea of having a more healthy, balanced relationship with food is very much akin to a secure attachment with a person, right? It ain't perfect. There's a lot of rupture and repair. There's a lot of having to kind of be gentle with yourself, make mistakes, or even not even look at them through the lens of mistakes, but just that not to be overly concerned, not to be, overly anxious, not to be overly avoidant. Like you got to be flexible in there. And so that's really what we're advocating for, is actually not, you have to be such a great, perfect eater, because in many ways, as we're describing, that's diet culture, right? That's this idea that there is a perfect way to eat, or like there's a perfect way to be a parent. Anybody who's a parent knows that's not the case, right? Like through all of those ruptures and repairs, it makes the relationship stronger. So being able to develop that sort of a relationship with food and eating, that's really what we're hoping for people to be gentle with themselves and to take care of themselves in the way that they would with any good, strong, secure relationship.
So I've been using AG1 now for over 6 months, which for me is amazing. I forget things a lot, but I make sure to make an effort to keep taking this and to do it regularly because it gives me all the good things. First and foremost, we keep hearing about gut biome and how important it is to mood and stress and all kinds of things. And I haven't quite known what to do about my gut biome. So AG1 is my answer. It has quality vitamins, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens, which calm down your overeager stress response system. I like that the ingredients are tested by a third party to ensure that what they say is what you get. I feel good about recommending that you try it, and I encourage you to keep taking it if you already are on board. Go to athleticgreens.com/therapist-uncensored. Be sure and use that link because for our listeners, you'll get a free year's supply of vitamin B and free travel packets for you to be able to take this superpower on the road. That's athleticgreens.com/therapist-uncensored. Hey there, it's been a while since I've talked to you all about one of my very, very favorite sponsors. And favorite because they've been around for a long time, but also because they are literally so incredibly useful. I'm talking about ZocDoc, which is an app and a website that you can go to. This costs you nothing, $0, zero investment, and it's so easy to use. It basically, no matter what you're looking for, you can look for an immunologist, you can look for a psychiatrist, a therapist, a dentist, women's health practitioner. You can filter for example, gender affirming or trans or let's say you have a high BMI and you're anxious about finding a medical practitioner that you're anticipating that they're going to fat shame you. You can put all of these filters in. And then what you can do, let's say you pull up some people, then you can compare them directly. There's a picture there, of course, but there's also, most importantly, patient reviews. And the reviews are real. It's a service more than a product. This is a service that I highly recommend. Bookmark it on your computer, download the app, ZocDoc.com/TU, and be sure and put the TU in so that they know that we are helping people find it. ZocDoc.com/TU. All right, thanks.
I wonder if you could maybe outline a little bit of, like, when you said that everybody might be surprised that looking at themselves, they have some level of disordered eating. That surprises me because I feel like it's easy for me to see where my eating gets disordered. And maybe that's, I just, you know what I mean? Like, I think about my friends talking about their own struggle with having a relationship to food. But I think being aware of it, but knowing what the answer is hard, right? Like, because it seems like most of the conversation is trying to manage eating, trying to eat, not eat, right? Or I guess for some individuals going too far and restricting the eating. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit of, like, what makes something in your mind disordered versus this normal relationship of, how do I know when I've had enough and what's the healthiest thing for me, et cetera? What do you consider disordered relationship to food versus just a normal relationship where we're going to maybe eat too much one day and take care of it the next?
I think for me, the one word that always comes up is rigidity. And whenever there's a rigid experience with food or movement, I mean, we're also talking about exercise too. Disordered eating sort of is the umbrella term. Movement is in there. We have all these, I'm pointing to my watch, these ways of tracking and how many steps did I get, and, apps to tell us how many calories we've burned. And so I think the minute there are these experiences of rigidity on a regular basis, that screams disordered, because it's not coming from within. It's external measurements of something that's really internally driven. Hunger and fullness comes from within. We're not, told those things from outside sources. Little kids, I mean, if anyone's around small children, they are so great at screaming, "I'm hungry," and they are like, they listen to their bodies. And half the time my son will take 2 bites of food and then he's like, "I'm good now," walk away. And he really is. He got his need met. And that sort of gets taught out of us early on. We start to implement, well, you need to have 2 bites of broccoli before you have your whatever it is. So, we move away from a lot of intuition and become a little bit more rigid in how we approach eating and movement. And so I think when there's rigidity on an ongoing basis, that's a red flag for disordered eating.
I'm going to push back a little bit on that because I'm curious about, as a parent, let's say your child basically rejects anything that isn't a chicken nugget. Like, as parents, like, I would definitely was, you're going to have the 2 bites of broccoli before. So I'm just like, but how do you, I guess what I'm suggesting is, like, let's help parents have teaching themselves and their children more intuitive eating. And so what do you suggest? Are you saying that you just let the children, like, say kind of what their body is or what their body wants?
To some degree. And there are definitely clinicians in the field doing this work with younger children and parents. One of the people who I always turn to, Zoe Bisbing, who's in New York and has a website, I think it's called My Body Positive Home, and Instagram handle is something close to that. Fantastic. And really talking about all these complicated issues because, of course, with children, we are still responsible for feeding them on some level, right? And then there's the Ellen Sater, I think, Institute. Essentially, what she proposes is we are responsible for presenting the food to our children. They are responsible for saying, how much they eat and what they eat, right? So that might mean, that doesn't mean that like in my home, if my kids say, hey, we're having brownie sundaes for dinner tonight, right? Like, yeah, I might, that might lead to some trouble because they would love that on some level, right? But if I say, all right, well, I'm going to make it, we're going to have chicken nuggets and we're going to have broccoli and we're going to have some pasta or something, in addition to that, my daughter might go, oh, I don't want chicken nuggets tonight. She doesn't like meat as much. She just eats the pasta, let's say. My son, let's say he only wants to eat the chicken nuggets. He's a real meat eater. And he says, hey, can I have seconds of those chicken nuggets? I don't really like this pasta, whatever. That we are responsible. And, if I get a couple of bites of broccoli in there, like we're golden, I'm happy. But it is my job to put the food in front of them, to provide snacks, to provide, it doesn't mean that we as parents aren't thinking about a variety of different foods and how important that is, right? That just as it's important to have food that's celebratory and joyful and fun, like chocolate chip cookies or ice cream sundaes or whatever it is, it's also really important to have food, fresh fruits and vegetables, have access to milk and eggs and all of the staples of our diet that helped our kids to grow and be healthy. For some folks, they don't have access to those foods, those basic staples. They have access to ultra processed foods. They have access to things that are within their budget. So it's really hard to say, how do you feed your children and how, what is a good balanced diet when in some people's cases, they don't have as much choice. But when you do have choice, obviously you want to advocate for your children having really nutritious foods, in addition to not demonizing or being afraid or phobic about foods that are not as nutritionally dense, but are tasty and enjoyable and fun. And so those are some of the ways in which we can help parents to kind of understand how to feed children in a way that's flexible. All foods fit is a term that we often use in the eating disorder community. And that just means that food has many different facets that it encompasses in our lives, and that food should, on some level, help us to feel emotionally safe and secure, in addition to being nutritious and, helping us to be strong and healthy.
I was going to add one little nugget, no pun.
Add a nugget.
I was thinking about when we're in those moments with our kids and we see them only reaching for one type of food, I think it's helpful to just name that as parents, we feel afraid. We get worried. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen if they only eat this food? And we can sort of put our own loss of intuition on our children of like, they'll figure it out, after a couple, maybe a meal and they don't have any fruit, that the next day they want some fruit, that they also have some intuition there. And as long as we continue to offer those options, that they'll reach for them. I think there's a lot of concern as parents of like, oh no, they're only going to eat this. And then what's going to happen? And then what's going to happen? They're not going to be healthy, putting that in quotes. So I think checking that a little bit too, as parents, is useful. I have to do it all the time. Like, yep, this meal, that's not happening. And okay, I'm going to pack a lunch that's balanced. And it comes home usually consumed.
Lots of cucumbers coming back in that lunchbox.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even just the exposure of like, this is a variety of different foods. And then if your kiddo is like, okay, carrots are part of lunch, that's kind of normal for me. And I don't always eat them, but I know what they taste like. And I kind of like that they're crunchy. And that it doesn't have to be how much did they get in. I've had so many like older moms or caregivers come to me and, reassure me with like, yeah, my kid ate like Cheerios for 3 years and they were like, like solely that for 3 years and they're fine now. They're in their 30s or 40s or whatever.
So I think what you're saying, which is really helpful, is that we have to be aware of our own anxiety as parents. And if we are imparting our anxiety, including with the body image culture, my child's going to eat that and gain weight and be heavy. That's an internalized anxiety. And I think what y'all are saying is that being aware of our own biases as parents, as clinicians, about how that anxiety comes out, and teaching our children to listen to themselves, and then we need to listen to them. We don't need to be dominated by them. You're still going to put the food in front of them that you feel is healthy rather than, oh, I'm so scared that my child won't eat. I'm going to go get chicken nuggets over and over again. If the child doesn't eat, I guess that's the other thing is like, is there anxiety if you notice that your child continues to basically say, I'm not hungry, I'm not hungry, I'm not hungry? At what point do you listen? And at what point do you start to want to teach them to listen to their body image? I mean, that's a kind of a hard dynamic as parents.
Oh, yeah, and it's so scary. I mean, I think that's from the time you leave the hospital, right? They're weighing your child. They're like, how much did they, the minute, you leave to the next pediatrician appointment. So and I mean, I'm especially primed to this in the work that I do, but yeah, it's a concern. Like, oh gosh, they're not eating. What's going on? There, something must be wrong. And obviously there's a line in the sand where that, absolutely be talking to your pediatrician, maybe one that is more flexible in their approach. I think there are some doctors who are like, well, they should only be eating these things. But I remember how relieved I was when my pediatrician was like, oh, fruits and vegetables, as long as they're getting one or the other, like that's fine. Green, that's great, but also strawberries are great too. But I think really trying to offer the foods, allow for there to be flexibility and not be so reactive, because that also teaches kids like, oh, I've got some control here. I can make my mom scared and then I'll get what I know, maybe I will only get the thing that I really want. And not that that's always bad, but it's not balanced.
It can promote like a negotiation, like
Right, a power
like
struggle.
love this conversation about helping people kind of relax as parents. I was not a relaxed parent around some of these things, and I wish I would have been. So this is really soothing to me. One of the things I wonder is, what about kids who relationship to food is impacted by neurodiversity?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because I think that is a piece that it does go beyond just our anxieties, right? And that we see a lot of these kiddos who are diagnosed with what they call RFID, which is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. You see a lot of that overlapping with kids who are on the autism spectrum, maybe ADHD. There may be some sensory processing issues that are impacting their relationship with food, foods that are more unpredictable. Like a strawberry is never just a strawberry, right? A strawberry could be mushy, or it could be grainy, or it could be sweeter, it could be less sweet. Whereas a Ritz cracker is always a Ritz cracker, and a chicken nugget is usually a chicken nugget. And that is very predictable and helpful for kids who maybe have a lot of anxiety due to that unpredictability and wanting things that feel familiar and feel safe. If you're finding yourself kind of leaning into seeing those behaviors in your kiddo, or if you know that your kiddo's on the spectrum and they're having some food anxiety or aversions, I would just suggest working with a really fantastic dietitian that works with kids who are neurodiverse, or even adults. We're seeing a lot of that, these kind of undiagnosed adults that had a lot of food issues as children and they were never addressed. So that is obviously something that we would really advocate for, is helping kids, because sometimes it might mean having a smaller variety of food so that the child has a positive experience of food and eating, and some small exposures over time can really do a lot of good. So it's a unique situation for every person, but yes, that definitely plays in.
So tuning in and really considering what's going on is a really important aspect of this. And tuning into our own anxiety will really help, I think, instead of I need to get this food, this person to do this. It's like, oh, I really need to tune in what's going on for me or for my child or for me as an adult about why my relationship to food is the way it is.
Yes, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, and avoiding the power struggle, tuning into the anxiety as a way of stepping out of that.
And so I think what I hear y'all saying, kind of getting back to the whole like teaching ourselves and those that we love to listen and value their body and really tune in to their body and to live less in anxiety, right? Like, I mean, that's obvious, what we talk about with relationships, as you were saying, Kathryn, earlier, like it's any relationship we have with food, we want it to be from a secure place. And that's what y'all are promoting, is a secure way of being connected to who you are, the body image that you have, the body that you have, and the foods that you are wanting to tune into it rather than to be anxiously reactive. You're trying to promote intuitively learning to set your own desires, your own value, and not be so manipulated or tossed around by the disorganization that we're experiencing in the world right now.
It can be really overwhelming. Yes.
Yeah. So before we wrap, what are just a few suggestions that y'all have that you share with your clients to help us practice more intuitive approaches to food?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I work with a lot of folks who are in recovery and are recovered from an eating disorder and have moved from a place of fear and restriction. And with restriction, like Kate was saying earlier, there was a lot of binging. And we talk so freely now about how, they approach meals in a place where they're really trying to check in with their hunger and fullness. So, helping us to really just remember that we have those sensations that we're told to block out over and over and over again and to slow down. It's a big thing for me in this work is, what am I hungry for? Being sort of curious and allow for that to be a meal that you get. I mean, how many times are there moments where it's like, oh, I want that, but I shouldn't eat that? And we talk a lot in this work about whose voice is that? Who's saying you should or shouldn't eat that? So, really trying to help folks to just slow down, get in touch with what they might be hungry for emotionally, and trying to differentiate if someone's really hungry physically for something. Obviously, that's different, but if they're hungry for something emotionally, how can they get that need met so it doesn't get sort of the wires don't get crossed with food? They might just be eating emotionally when there might be something really deep down that they're craving from a partner, or I need you to listen to me more, or, a friend, like they've been feeling rejected. And so really trying to slow down, understand that process before just launching into an action.
So let's say I'm standing at the pantry and I'm searching for something, and I guess impulsively walked into the pantry and I'm looking for food. And it's hard to imagine stopping in that moment and going, am I wanting more from my partner? But I agree with you. It's so important because that walk to it likely for me is stress, right? I'm stressed and it's avoidance and I want to get away from what I'm doing. So, is there a suggestion for how to do that in the moment? Because am I going to step in the pantry and say, do I want more affirmation from my partner? Is that something that you're suggesting that I work myself to? And it might be. That's why I'm asking. What are a couple of steps that may help me in that one moment get more intuitive and internalized in what I'm really wanting?
Well, I would say, I mean, maybe this sounds more overboard than just in that moment, but this is the whole fundamental crux of, what we're encouraging people to do. And I think that your listeners are probably very well versed in attachment. But one of the first things, like if I have a client that comes in and says, last night I just went to the pantry and I took out the giant box of my kids' goldfish and I just ate the entire box and I didn't think. And I just before I knew it, it was totally gone. A lot of what we're doing is unpacking their attachment style. And generally speaking, we're going to find channels to what that need is, where that unmet need is coming from. So when I feel, in the case with so many of my clients who are in their 30s and in the dating world and really feeling that experience of being on the dating apps and being kind of a product there and having to put yourself on the line again and again and again and hope for the best and try to make connection. So maybe I'll have a client who comes in and says, I ate the box of goldfish. And then we work back what was going on that day? Didn't you say that you didn't hear back from that guy or that girl or whoever it was, that they just kind of ghosted after, and just really trying to get in touch with Yeah, I was feeling really untethered. I was feeling really rejected. I was feeling really alone. And then over time, because that's not going to eliminate, just that insight is not going to eliminate the desire to binge or to emotionally eat. But I will say, what you start to see is there's a deeper understanding and a connection to that more in real time. I'm walking to the pantry. Why am I walking to the pantry? I just ate dinner. I'm full. But I'm not full. I'm really emotionally dysregulated. I feel really scared. I feel like there's no hope. I'm not going to ever be loved in the way that I want to be. And making that kind of a connection and really sitting with those feelings, or even having someone who you can share that feeling with, right? To like have it validated, whether that's I'm going to tell my therapist next week, or I'm going to send her a text and just say, like, feeling that feeling again, really wanted to binge, or I did binge. And, being able to sort of like understand those kind of symbiotic experiences of seeking out attachment, or seeking out connection with food, that can be extremely powerfully healing when either you go into therapy and the therapist does validate that longing, that need that you are having internally, or a close connected friend, or even in yourself, like, I don't deserve to feel this low about myself. I don't deserve to feel so hollow that I need to be filled up, by food, or this particular person who didn't text me back. I really have to give myself that compassion and love. And that's a long process. That's a really painful and long process. And that's kind of, it's a hard sell, right? Like, because it's not a quick fix. It's not a like immediate cure, but it is a really lasting and foundational repair rather than a papering over. So I guess I don't know that I have something to sort of pull out. I'm really bad at being sort of more of a CBT therapist, or having those,
No,
you
that
know.
was perfect, because I think what you're saying is it's perfect, because it's not about a quick fix. It's not about I may be walking to the pantry. It's not waiting till I walk to the pantry to be deeply exploring what it is that is activated for me. That it's not just the walk. If it was just one walk to the pantry, I wouldn't be thinking about it. It's that I likely have a pattern, and it's kind of probably predictable, and it's around something that is being stirred. So it's a really validating approach. It's like, oh, wait, care about yourself more rather than shame yourself about your actions. And then take the time to go deep, go and tend to yourself, and not live in a reactive world where other people are manifesting so much aspects of insecurity inside of us. So it's a beautiful answer. It's like, take the time to know what that need is and that want, and to validate it and care for it, not try to find a quick in the moment fix.
Absolutely. And you said the not reacting with shame. We practice this harm reduction approach as well. And I think that is also an important puzzle piece, that if you take this approach that's slow, there's also a compassionate part of that, and sustainable piece, that the pendulum just doesn't keep swinging back and forth. There's not an immediate placement of shame or judgment or guilt on any of the behaviors with food. There's an attempt to understand it so that you can meet it with kindness, and so that you can sidestep that yo-yo experience, that sort of, okay, now I need to restrict. I have to be good tomorrow and I can't do that again, versus understanding that served a purpose. I did that. I get it. What's the next best thing I can do?
Wow. Yeah, that's wonderful. What is the next best thing? For therapists, I wanted to tap for therapists out there listening who might be having light bulbs go on about how they engage in their therapeutic relationships, where maybe they're jumping into the diet culture and doing a cheering on, or really helping a client lose weight, believing that that's really the crux and the core of what's on the other side. I really hear you integrating the idea of attachment and mindfulness and intuition and value into the therapeutic process. And if a therapist wants to get more trained in that for themselves, where would you send them?
Yeah, we have a course that spells all of this out. So thank you, Anne. It's through the Academy of Therapy Wisdom. And our course is called Hungry for Security. And so it's really looking at all these disordered eating behaviors through the lens of attachment, validating our clients' experiences in diet culture, and helping clinicians just to move from, yeah, like you said, championing any of these behaviors that could be really detrimental to their health, to moving to a place of neutrality and really trying to unpack and understand why they might be engaging in the behaviors versus just, naming them as bad or cheering on some poor behaviors as well.
And the course is really rooted in attachment and also a health at every size mentality or lens, which essentially means that we are looking at health more holistically and it's not about the pursuit of weight loss. And in fact, the pursuit of weight loss can really reemphasize weight stigma, anti-fat bias in our culture. So there's a lot of information in the course about that as well.
So if for those listeners out there that are not therapists, and one of the things, if they were thinking about going into therapy, making sure that the therapist has some sort of an attachment lens, especially if they're going for anything with their relationship to food, it might be good to interview that therapist about what is their approach, what is their feeling around the diet culture, because you want to try to get that support that you're really looking for instead of unconsciously joining some of the system. Though many people out there don't have the privilege to be able to walk into a therapist office. Is this course also for someone that is really dealing with this issue for themselves, or is it primarily for therapists?
The course is primarily for therapists, but we're also working on a book that's going to tie all of these pieces together. That won't be out for a while, but there are some Hallmark books out there. Intuitive Eating I think there's going to be like a 5th edition soon, is a great place for people to really try to slow down and understand, okay, the importance of getting rid of diet culture mentality and working on intuitive eating and even moving to a place of gentle nutrition, which is a more balanced place of eating. So that's a great read for anyone.
Fat Talk is also a great book to get people started on their way of kind of healing their relationship with their body. There are a number of others, and we can definitely give you that information.
We'll drop that into our show notes so that anyone out there wanting to dive deeper can do so. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show. I had so much fun talking with you about and gaining from your wisdom on this topic. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Anne.
And I'm excited. Again, that course is Hungry for Security, Healing Disordered Eating Through an Attachment Lens. So check it out. That's through Therapy Wisdom. Is that right? Check it out. All right, y'all. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. If you did, send it on to somebody else that can gain from the wisdom of Vanessa and Kathryn. We would also appreciate it if you take time to rate and review us. That always helps people find us. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you around the bend.
Therapist Uncensored is Ann Kelly and Sue Marriott. This podcast is edited by Jack Anderson.